So Lucio, I think I drink enough coffee. Drink a little bit of water. Stay hydrated. Perfect. Lucio. Big thing to think about with Lucio. Big thing to say about Lucio. Lucio's a very diverse character. Before I kind of go into like talking about the guide, big thing to just talk about with Lucio. I'll do my best with Lucio. In my opinion, Lucio is one of the harder characters to kind of go through. And the reason I say Lucio is one of the harder characters to go through is Lucio is, at least in my mind, it's a little bit different probably for newer players, but for players that have been around like me since the beginning, or people that have been around since the beginning, Lucio has filled many roles. So before break was a thing, he used to get played in dive, he gets played in rush. So I'm going to do my best to simplify this stuff as much as possible. But Lucio might be a little bit of a longer thing. It's a little sad, but it's the honest truth. But overall, I think that I'm going to focus on Lucio in terms of, how do I put this? I'm going to focus on Lucio in Moira, like Moira kind of goat sort of thing, or like Moira rush. And I'm going to try to focus on Lucio a little bit in rush, in the two play styles that he can do. So bear in mind, I might be a little bit stumbly with this kind of stuff, and that's just because Lucio is, like I said, he's a very multi-purpose character. He can be used to fill a lot of roles. My mind goes back to the old days with Lucio too, so it's more so me just collecting my thoughts, making sure that I have everything kind of down in the right way. But you have been warned as we do that. So that being said, I'm gonna pull up Shock vs Shanghai, and that is going to be what I decide to go through for this Lucio review. And we're going to look at Hanamura in King's Row specifically. So I'll open up Hana. Again, you know the drill here, guys. So I have Hana open. We're not going to look at Hana right this second. We're going to look at Lucio as a whole first in terms of his kit, his abilities, what he can do, what you should be keeping in mind with Lucio. So, that being said, Lucio. Character that I despise. Only because he's a very, like I said, he's a character that can fill many roles, but I'm going to do my best to kind of figure this out, right, and help you guys kind of go through this. So I'm trying to think if I should start with positioning with Lucio, or if I should start with his abilities and then go into positioning. I think it's easier to start with abilities, then go into his movement and positioning, just because abilities will help you understand a little bit better of the different movement options you have, or your positioning, where to start, how to kind of think about Lucio. So we'll start with Boop. We'll go down the list from there. I'm not going to focus on his primary fire. Again, a lot of characters or a lot of players just utilize left click as spam. Just know that with his left click, it's a projectile, so it won't instantly go where you're aiming. It will take a little bit of time. There's a little bit delay between each shots. He shoots 5 bullets. He has a full mag of 20. So most of the time, just keep in mind, like, a large kind of tactic a lot of players use is spamming in a large group or spamming in a specific area from a far, if you're at a far range. If you're in a closer range, they kind of focus on just where the character is at that time and just look to kind of shoot from above when they're wall riding. Anyhow, focusing specifically on Boop though right now. Boop is a very good ability. Bop. Did I spell Boop wrong? Am I illiterate? Let's see. I feel like I spelled Boop wrong. Why does that look wrong to me? I'm very scared that I've embarrassed myself now. Pretty sure that's Bop and that's not Boop. I'm kind of concerned now. Let's see. No, this is boop. We're good. Bop is with 1-0. So we're good. We're good. I got really scared there. Sorry. Going back to what I was kind of going on about. Sorry. With boop, there's two ways you can kind of think about boop. Now, what are the ways I think about boop? Well, there's two streamlined ways that I think about boop. Number one is defensively. The other one is offensively. So let's go to what I usually kind of talk about with Lucio players, because a lot of them are very aggressive players. We're going to think about boop in a defensive manner. So boop, what can you use it as a defensive manner for specifically? Well, peeling is the key thing here. Who are you peeling for? Well, you could be peeling for, most of the time, your tank or your main support. Again, it's either main tank or main support, so we're just going to do main at the start here. So boop, in terms of a defensive thing, it's mainly used for peeling. There's not really other usages for boop. Why is peeling such an important thing? Well, when you're peeling with boop, it creates some distance, right, from you and the enemy team, or a player from your team and the enemy team. It can create distance. It can allow for depending on the amount of damage put out. Let's say that it was way back in the day, Lucio's Zen was put together. If Zen put a Discord orb onto, let's say, a Tracer that was going on him, he looks to shoot at him, he hits an orb, Lucio hits a boop and maybe one of his left click shots forces Tracer to recall instantly like that. So it can be used like in a way to kind of assassinate, or like, I guess, allow, instead of, I'll say, possibility to help kill. But the key thing with this peeling, this booping, is you're creating distance and you're causing enemy to be in poor position, and the possibility to help kill that person. Offensively is a little bit of a different case. There's two key things that I can think about offensively using boop that is very strong. So the first thing is you knock enemy within team. Oh, ride boop. So what do I mean by wall ride boop? Knocking the enemy within the team, most of the time you're not going to do that on the ground. It's very hard to do it on the ground because the enemy team can see you coming, and your movement speed isn't increased unless you have amp. Now imagine if you're on the wall. Remember, wall riding increases your movement speed, right? And you're using amp. It's going to be very hard for them to stop you, or very hard for them to kind of see you coming right off the bat and respond, right? Unless they're already thinking about it and somebody's watching that whole wall or anything along those lines, or mirroring the Lucio. So a lot of the time what you're trying to do is you're trying to kind of utilize that amp and that extra movement speed from the wall, use it to gain momentum. You'll drop behind the team or enemy team at that, boop them into your team, and then use either the wall to get out, or use the remaining momentum you had from walling or riding that wall to get back to your team very quickly. Most of the time when you're knocking an enemy within your team, it's either someone that is very close, or it's probably the main tank most of the time, or one of the tanks, right? Because the tanks will be holding for a position, or if it's somebody that's a little bit maybe too aggressive, like for example we saw Violet being a very aggressive Moira, maybe it could be a Moira. If she's too far forward, you can force her shift very easily, or maybe it's a Reaper who has no shift, right? So again, it's anyone out of position. Well, we'll do it like this. Primarily, it's tanks. Secondarily, sometimes you'll get people that are out of position, right? Other way to think about offensive boops, right, is in terms of setting up ultimate plays. So what do I mean by setting up ultimate plays? Well, think about it like this. You have a shatter, you have a May blizzard, so like a May ultimate, right? You have something like a Diva Bomb, right? You can utilize your Lucio to offensively either maybe boop the Reinhardt so that you can hit a better Diva Bomb, or you can hit a shatter. Maybe you're booping the Diva away so that the enemy Diva isn't able to properly eat the May ult, right? So it's used to set up and displace the enemy so that you can have the best possible play. Alright. That being said, I forgot there was one other thing for defensive booping. Do I remember it? Peeling? I don't, so it must not have been important, so I'm just going to leave it. Alright, so we got booped out of the way. We're going to talk about Aura next, and then we're going to talk about Amp. So, Aura. It is a very important part about Lucio's play. You have Healing Aura, or it's a main essence of Lucio's play. You have Healing Aura, and you have Speed Aura, right? So the best way that I'm going to go through this is we're going to talk about speed before healing. So I'm going to do speed first, and then I'm going to do healing. So you have speed, you have healing. All right. So Speed Aura. 2 usages in terms of how to use Speed Aura. Number 1, key thing that you need to think about is engagement, right? The second way you need to think about it, there we go, is kiting. Someone, if you guys watch Natter's streams, Natter will refer to kiting as ebb and flow. So you kite backwards and then you look to regress kind of thing. So we're going to look at engagement first, and we're going to look at kiting after. So it's not rocket science with regard to speed and Lucio, I would say. I think I might put speed on the side there. But engaging with speed is very much so. You want to look to think about when do you activate or when do you swap off to speed in these situations. Well, for engagements, most of the time it's I want to be on speed around, or we'll do it like this, at the start of fights, right? Because at the start of fights, that is when engagements will look to happen. So you want to look to either catch the enemy off guard, specifically with an engagement, at the start of these fights. If you're not on speed at the start of these fights, whether it's engagement or kiting, you will look to be in a very poor position, because at that point you might not be deciding the tempo, or you might not be able to take the first tempo in terms of fighting. And as Lucio, and as you know, for brawl compositions, which Lucio is usually played in, it is very important to take the first tempo, take the fight to them, and not receive the fight, right? Be at that second tempo. You want to always try to be at that first tempo. So you want to always look to be able to engage first. That means you have to be at speed at the start of these fights, or else somebody will take the tempo away from you. When else should you kind of be looking at speed? It's just, again, simple. Closing the distance, right? A lot of the times I say, like, a good way you can kind of think about speed as well is around corners, right? If you are around a corner, you should almost always be on speed as much as you can, because either you're gonna engage, or an engagement's coming to you, right? And you need that speed to be able to, again, if you want to go first tempo, like I said, speed through, be very aggressive, right? Trying to think if there's anything else I can think of in terms of speed and using it for engagement. There's not really much without going into Amp, and you know what I might do instead? I think I'm going to combine Amp with this, to be honest with you, because Aura and Amp are very important together. I think they go in tangent almost with one another, so it's good to kind of talk about them both. So I say at the start of the fights, you want to be at speed. In terms of closing distance, you want to close the distance. I talked about the corners, but a big thing that you want to keep in mind is you want to Amp at corners. So instead of just saying around corners, I'll say Amp speed at corners, because when you're at the corner, that means that that's probably the shortest distance that you'll be with the enemy. And even though it makes a little bit less sense to say, oh, you're so close, why would you Amp? Well, you want to Amp so that you can 100% ensure that you're going to be able to stick on top of the enemy team, right? You're not just amping to close the distance in terms of they're very far, you need to close some sort of distance. You want to make sure that they can escape from when you're looking to engage on them as well. I don't really think there's anything else in terms of engaging. I guess the only other thing I could think about is, as a big kind of point here, is it's kind of coherent between the two, and I'll type this as a kiting thing as well. Be around our terrain to terrain. Around some terrain. So key thing when I say terrain to terrain, and we've seen this word used before, just be around some sort of terrain, right? When you're using your amp, you don't want to, again, during the duration of the amp speed, you want to close distance in the open, but you want to end around some terrain. So I'll do it like that. End around some terrain. Because if you have, think about it like this, you use amp speed, you're trying to use amp speed specifically to close some sort of distance, right? You can be in the open because it allows you to close that distance in the open a little bit better, but the end point has to be around some sort of terrain, because you don't have, or you have aura, but you don't have amp, which is that extra little bit of speed or that extra little bit of burst healing that you require to either survive or be able to get to a safer position, right? You want to have some way to reduce your hitbox, as I've talked about before. You want to be able to reduce your hitbox. If you're going to be in the open all the time, it's not a good look for you. You want to make sure that you're using it to go from most of the time terrain to terrain. I'll also say, or open area to terrain kind of thing, right? There we go. So that's kind of starting with speed. So I was talking about speed, we talked about engagements, I'll talk about cutting and ebb and flow. Again, a key point is you want to be on speed, close to terrain. Because if you're not at speed close to terrain, you're not anticipating the engagement. So key thing is anticipate I cannot spell. So instead we'll be ready for engage. You wanna have your speed ready close to terrain, because like I talked about, if you are engaging, you want to engage when you're close to terrain, right? So you're around a corner or something like that, because you know that's when they're gonna go for you. So you want to be ready for that engagement. In terms of after that, close to terrain, what's another thing you need to keep in mind when you're kiting? You need to keep in mind when you're kiting, where you are kiting to. If you don't know where you're going to kite to, then you're kind of done for. As Lucio, you control the speed. So even though your Rhine is holding the space, and most of the time you follow Rhine in these kind of compositions, or a monkey or tank in general, you as Lucio control speed, you can see all around you more where the tanks are focused in front. So you should be calling, okay, we need a backup main, like back up here, or like rotate through here. You need to call where you're kind of backing up to, and then you can call the re-engagement. And that's where it comes in. So where are you kiting? And then ready to re-engage or not. You should, most of the time, anyone on your team can call if they're ready to re-engage from the original kite, and this is going to the ebb and flow like Natter used to talk about, or as Natter talks about in his reviews. When you kite, most of the time what happens is you're going backwards and then you're going back forwards, right? So you're absorbing and then pushing out the pressure back at them. That doesn't happen every single time, but most of the time, about 80% of the time, that is what you're going to be doing. So that is a key thing you got to think about when you're cutting as well. Are you ready to re-engage, or do you need to play this a little bit slower, kind of work your way into it slowly but surely? The other thing to keep in mind with speed in terms of kiting is... I think that's it. I think that's the only key things that I would keep in mind with that, actually, to be honest with you. I don't think it's a very elaborate or crazy kind of mythology. I think it's a very simple mythology. Healing. I think healing is a very simple thing as well. So we'll keep healing over here. I think I'll have enough room for it. So healing is another topic point, obviously. I don't think it goes into as broad of a thing as engagements and kiting. Healing is a general thing that you kind of have to look at as a whole. When are you healing? When are you not healing? Again, it's not rocket science. With regard to when you're on heal aura, it's when your team is fighting, right? When your team is fighting, you likely will be kind of cycling between speed and heal, but most of the time you're going to be on heal about, I would say, I don't know, 85% of the time in the fight. The other 15% is on speed. So maybe you need to get somewhere faster. Maybe you have to help your team kind of reposition a little bit. But most of the time you're going to be on healing in that case, and you're going to be amping the healing. And I'll talk about specific times when you can look to amp heal. The other thing to kind of keep in mind as well is when else should I be on healing? Well, I'm talking about when the team is fighting, right? That's going to happen a lot of the times, but is there specific instances that I can look at of when you should be on the heal when your team is fighting? Well, number one, it goes into, is your support in danger? Or instead of support, I'll say backline in danger. If your backline is in danger, they might require you to just amp heal. So what used to be a thing before the amp changes kind of came in, because that came in quite a long time ago now, you used to wait until your support was getting highly pressured to amp healing at that point. A good example is when Lucio Baptiste was used, you would look to utilize your amp, specifically when your Baptiste was getting dove, so that you could amp and he could shift. He could use the shift, you use your amp, and it would keep it so that you could stay alive just from the amp and the shift together, right? So you can look to use it when your backline is in danger. Maybe your front line's okay, but your backline needs it, so you look to use it to peel for your backline. Another way to think about healing, like when should I look to use healing maybe on my team as a whole? HP is below half, or I won't say half, 3/4. Start amp. So amp is strong, but amp isn't that strong, and amp doesn't last forever. So a key thing that you need to think about with amp healing for Lucio is, okay, well, when is it too late to start amping? Based off of how long amp survives. Again, as Lucio, you're not a main healer. You are someone that can help continuously keep an HP at a specific level for a short period of time. So looking to use amp heal, if you use it at half HP, it's a little bit low because it might force your team to walk back at that point. You want to make sure that your tanks in your team, if you have the opportunity to amp heal, can keep in the fight for a longer period of time, which means you need to consistently be able to keep them at a specific HP. And that is what amp healing does as Lucio. It's not about healing up, it's about keeping them at a specific HP level so that they regain lost HP that they're losing during the fight or while they're fighting. So a lot of the time I like to kind of see my Lucios amp around the 3/4 area. So if they lost a quarter of their HP, that's when I like my Lucios start amping heal, just because it allows them to stay at that area for a bit. The flex support can maybe help kind of relieve that by healing them a bit more, or the flex support can look to kind of deal a little bit of damage. Again, it's just a way to think about just keeping them at that HP. Keeping at HP. Engagements. Something that I will bring up with engagements that I kind of forgot about, and I'll add it to here. I'm gonna move this just a little bit, just right there. Perfect. Is looking to use it for solo and team play. What do I mean by this? Well, with aura, with speed, you need to understand that you can look to use it for your team's engagements at the start of fights, or you can look to use it for your own engagements, right? We talked about boops, offensive boops and defensive boops. Most of the time when you're going for offensive boops, you need your amp. So you can look to utilize that as a way for you to start a fight through booping somebody forward, or potentially looking to generally just like look to make a play as a Lucio, right? Maybe you want to ult and then go for something like that, right? So start of the fights with speed, you can look to use it as a little bit more of that solo kind of usage there for yourself. All right, we talked about amp, we talked about aura, we talked about boops. Let's talk about sound barrier next, and then we'll go into positioning and movement. So sound barrier. There has been multiple talks about sound barrier as a whole, I would say. How do you use sound barrier? I hear a lot of people say, there was a statistic way back, I remember in season 2 OWL, where it was, well, how do you look to use sound barrier? Do you use it to engage? Do you use it not to engage? Yada yada. In general, I don't know, actually. I would say that most people get value from sound barrier, not for an engagement. So using sound barrier and then trying to close distance, they get it while you're fighting. So a lot of the times when you're looking to use sound barrier, I would say the usage can be diverse in how you use it. But in my opinion, the most value will come from during mid-fight or countering enemy ultimate, EMP, shatter, etc. So with the mid fight, right, when team is clashing with enemy, it's mainly when you're already fighting. So you already have met the enemy team. I don't mean anything along those lines. Again, when I talk about mid fight, I mean it when both teams are kind of fighting. Not a very, very complex thing. In terms of countering enemy ult, again, it's not a complex thing. You know Sombra has EMP. You're hiding so that you can beat to protect your team from that EMP, gain that extra little bit of shield. Maybe the enemy has shattered somebody. Okay, well, enemy shatters. I'm going to look to beat to keep my team alive from that shatter, right? Any way to counter any sort of enemy ultimate is a big way to kind of talk about it. I don't think sound barrier is a complex ult, even though a lot of people make it sound like it is. It's a very simplistic thing. You're using it to sustain in a fight for a longer period of time in any means. So I would say I'll use that as my point, and these are kind of just example points to kind of think about how you're doing it. So the ideology behind sound barrier is sustain for longer in fights, right? And these are the examples of how to think about that. In terms of the rest, so positioning and movement, we'll talk about positioning first. I'm thinking about if movement should be a separate topic point. I don't fully know if I should do movement as a separate topic point or if I should keep it with positioning. For now, we'll just focus on that, and then we'll see what I think from there. In terms of positioning as Lucio, this is where Lucio can be a little bit complex. You can position yourself either with the team, and this is what many people call backline Lucio, or you can position yourself solo, which a lot of people call that. People call that Reddit Lucio. For us, we'll call it Reddit Lucio. So, what do I mean by team versus solo? So, Team Lucio most of the time is playing to support backline. They're playing on the grounds. So instead of putting playing both times, I'll just kind of reduce this wording. They're on the ground. They support the backline. Don't really think there's anything else I can really think of right now for backline Lucio. Support backline on the ground. It's kind of it for Team Lucio. Team Lucio is a little bit more stale. Talking to a lot of Lucio players, you're just doing the bare minimum of your job. You're not doing anything crazy, right? Solo Lucio, so going for those aggressive plays, aggressive boops, everything while riding. Most of the time, you're solo. So, well, that's kind of, I'll put it more like this. You're wall riding most of the time, a lot of the time when you're doing solo Lucio. Rarely on grounds. You are looking to set up plays for team. Looking to be nuisance. I can't spell nuisance, so we're gonna say looking to be annoying. As looking to be annoying. Booping people, pressuring, booping, shooting people, solo value. So to explain, I'm going to keep movement and positioning kind of the same, to be honest with you, because most of this, again, Lucio, movement and positioning kind of go hand in hand with each other. And again, with team-oriented Lucio or backline Lucio, you're mainly sticking with your backline. You're helping them kind of walk up and take space. I'll kind of put that as an additional point here. You're supporting your backline, so you're helping them, you know, help survive and take space, and you're on the ground most of the time. So what do I mean by you're on the ground? Well, most of the time you're not going to be on the wall, because if you're on the wall, you can't help your backline or you can't help your team. That's why most of these kind of Lucios stay on the ground. Solo Lucios, they are rarely on the ground. They're wall riding all the time because they're looking to set up plays or make kind of plays on the map by using the extra movement speed, by being in that kind of third dimension. So I talk about X, Y, Z is kind of how you need to look at Overwatch. Z being the heights, X and Y being vertical and horizontal, right? On the ground, that is. So like this. So realistically, if you can use that third dimension of Z, a lot of the time you will take eyes away from your team, and it can help kind of create pressure because they have to look elsewhere, right? So they're looking at another angle. That being said, that goes into the last thing of you're being annoying. So by forcing the enemy team to have to respect you being in that third dimension, by booping people away, let's say a diva's trying to go onto your backline, you boop diva away, or you keep booping a Mei away when she's trying to freeze your Rhine, or you're booping the Reaper away, right? That is a key thing that can really be annoying. You obviously trying to solo maybe a support from dropping in the skybox and trying to kill a support can be really annoying. Again, you're going for that solo value. That is what you're looking for most of the time when you're going solo. Now, do I think that there's one way better than the other? I don't. I really don't. I think the better way to go about this is you need to combine the two together. From my point, I remembered that mirroring is probably a good thing to kind of bring up. Reaper, Mei, Diva, Lucio, etc. I think a mixture of these two playstyles is really important. You can't always be with your team because you're never going to get your own value, your own individual value. You can't always be solo trying to make these plays all the time because then you're never helping your team. So you need to, again, find a mixture between the two of these so that you can have a better understanding, but not just a better understanding, a better job. The last thing that I kind of didn't bring up with this is mirroring. So what do I mean by mirroring? And this happens a lot more as a team-oriented Lucio. To help support your team and help them stay alive and take space, if a Reaper is going really hard into your backline or a Diva is shifting into your backline, you're just looking at them and taking kind of the 1v1, so you're booping them away, you're creating distance, you're making it so that they can't easily go onto your backline or onto specific members of your team. That's what I mean by mirroring. You're not fully taking the 1v1, but you're delaying the 1v1 and trying to use your boop to get them in poor positions. Okay, so that's Lucio in a nutshell. Yeah, that's Lucio in a nutshell. So we will go through some gameplay real quick. I'm going to try to make this look a little bit prettier, by the way. Whoop. Yep, okay, we're good. I'm going to look at this, and we're going to look at FDGod. So, Hanamura we're going to look at. We're going to look a little bit at King's Row as well. Key things to keep in mind. I know that Hanamura did not go well for Shock here. This was a very fast map by Shanghai. So again, you know the drill. Gonna go through this in real time. I'm just slowing it down right now so I can just quickly type in chat and we'll be on our way.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
A lovely day for field research.
Oh yeah, we're gonna increase the speed here. Oh no, what happened? Ah, there it is, perfect. Yep. Alright. Lucio gameplay, let's go. I'm very pumped and excited for this.
3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming.
Alright, I am not tapped in right now. Okay, perfect. Alright. So we're seeing Shock play a rush variation. Or sorry, let me rephrase. They're playing a Moira rush composition with the Winston here. Most of the time this can be better against the DPS comp of Dragons because it's more mobile. Winston is way more mobile than Ryan. Okay. So a little bit of cool tech. They look to go through the top left. You saw that FD wall ride over the top left so that he could kind of make it. It looks like his team's going to get a little bit stuck here. So right now as Lucio, it's kind of hard for you to really do anything here. Since Moira is with your Winston and you have a Mega Pack by here, you can look to maybe sustain with the Moira healing in your amp. He's using amp pretty late in some of these situations. Okay. Positionally, again, you're seeing him not really using the wall. He's staying by his Winston. He's trying to kind of go around areas where his team is. Again, a little bit specific. I would have rather him amped a little bit earlier there at the beginning so that Super didn't have half HP that entire time. I have a feeling that Violet was low healing. That's why Super wasn't able to get a little bit more healing specifically from Violet. So you see FDGod kind of is going on his own there when his team is disoriented. There's not a lot of kind of support and multiple members are dying there. He's just kind of running around seeing if there's anyone isolated. He's kind of staying close to these walls so that he gets that little bit of extra speed so that he can kind of move around a little bit better. But nothing crazy, right? Again, it's hard to play Lucio in this composition because you can't play freely as much as possible. You have to be on your team most of the time. It's very important as Lucio that you're on your Winston kind of in a way and you're helping your team get in and staying sustained and alive, and then once you start getting advantages you can look to go off and do your own thing. But the start is always the worst part about Lucio in these kind of compositions just because you're almost at the mercy of your team in terms of what you can do. So you're seeing a lot of the times when people are dying, like FD isn't really doing that much because there's not really much for him to do. He kind of is just waiting around. The strength for him will come from his team doing well, right? This composition thriving well. So far, we haven't seen a solid kind of start for this comp yet. Okay, they're just going to amp into the enemy team here. They decide to go right. That's a really weird timing for sound barrier. We need to go back there. I need to figure out why he sound barriered. So this is okay, whatever. They decide to speed, go in the right room. They really want to try to make this work, right? I don't agree with this sound barrier. Maybe he thought that Violet would die, but I think Violet still has... Just want to double check real quick. Violet is using a shift right now, so he's fine. He can live here. This goes back to a conversation as well with sound barrier because they're looking to maybe engage. They were looking to kite back actually. Then they look to re-engage. So again, this is what I meant by there's a discussion all the time about sound barrier. Do you use it to engage? Do you use it to when you're in the middle of a fight? This is why I like using it in the middle of a fight because now they feel obligated after that sound barrier to go for a play. The EMP lines up, but as they look to aggress here, look at how much of the sound barrier was wasted. Right? Half of the HP from the sound barrier was wasted for the engagement, whereas they could have probably gotten on top of them, sound barriered, and they would have had pretty much double HP from here. So again, it's really important that you don't kind of panic with that sound barrier and you just use it. Because once you're shocked and you're in that room, they're not going to go after you because the advantage is for your team, not for their team, right? They want to try to keep you in that open area. This is a very messy fight now. It looks like it's going in Shanghai's way. You see right away after that, FDGod tries to go for a play onto Izayaki, tries to get a kill so that they can have an easier time going in next time. Valiant attempt, didn't end up working out for him. So now, it looks like one last fight. They only have a monkey ult. They're going to amp. Super tries to go onto Izayaki. He's unable to. We see that FD is playing more so around Choyobin now, right? He's playing on these walls. And you see, he's playing on the walls. He's being very obnoxious. Proved away Void from trying to get a kill there. And from there, he's just kind of walking around looking for targets that he could potentially annoy or maybe kill if it's a squishy isolated. Now he's trying to make a play here because he knows that they're very much losing this fight. They're down a certain amount of members. He has to make a play, or somebody on Shock has to make a play. So he's looking to see if he can get some boosts maybe off the edge. If any members from Shanghai try to go that way, he's looking to see if he can potentially kill someone that's isolated. Not any luck there. And Shanghai from there just win the map. So we didn't get to see too much of FDGod's play here. I assume that the next one we're not going to see a lot of FDGod's play as well. Because I know that Shanghai pretty much capped this instantly. So again, do I think I'm seeing anything bad from FDGod? It's hard for me to say right now on this map, because in this map specifically, the whole team, it looks like, is being outplayed as a whole. So it's a little bit unfortunate. I thought potentially there was more to see aside from a macro level, and we could look a little bit more at FDGod as a whole, but doesn't really look like it. Alright. Okay, we see he's playing more towards the ground because of their composition. He doesn't want to be on the wall. It's really hard to kind of play on the wall here against the Pharah if she's able to land rockets, because you'll be in the open very often. We're seeing him play on the grounds. He's constantly looking at this ball. This is a good thing. He's looking to mirror ball if ball goes in. I'm glad to see that. He amps speed to have a better rotation. He's amping heal so that he can keep his team at a specific HP. And again, you see him trying to mirror people. He's mirroring ball. He's looking to mirror Sombra. He's not doing a bad job so far of actually mirroring people here and using his heal at the proper times. I actually like what I'm seeing from FD here. He's playing a good team-oriented Lucio right now. Ooh, that's unfortunate. No! That was so close to being so good. No. He was doing all the right things in this fight. He was mirroring. He was consistently keeping people in check. He was amping heals at proper times, in my opinion. See, look at this. He's keeping people's HP bars at a specific level, right? The key thing here is, like, Lee Gon survived, but right here, he got booped, and he tried to wall ride. He tried to wall ride out of there towards, like, using the middle wall. I think it would have been better if he just used the left wall instead, because he was already, it looked like he was already trying to be on it, but he didn't get enough momentum. He couldn't get up in time, and he just went down. That's just unfortunate, in my opinion. That comes from Fate's boop. Him having no aura, I think, at the time to get out of there safely. That's just unfortunate. Good play from Fate, though. It sucks that they weren't able to secure those kills. But I liked what I saw there on defense. That was actually not bad. But we still gotta watch a little bit more play. And we're gonna look at, I believe it was Shock vs Shanghai on Kings Road that I wanted to look at. So again, we're not seeing brawl v brawl matchups right now, yes. But we are seeing him play against specifically a DPS comp. I'm trying to think if I do want to see them play against a brawl for variety purposes. You know what? We're going to scrap this. We're not going to look at that one. We're going to look at Shock vs Atlanta, and we're going to look at Havana, King's Row. Let's do Kings from this. I know I've already looked at this before with Sim for Kai, but I think this is actually a better thing to go through. I will go through Shanghai after this. I want to prioritize this because I want variety first. So instead of showing same comp, same thing, I'm going to show you what happens in a Brawl v Brawl matchup now with FDGod. How does things change? How do things kind of work from here, right? So this first fight is almost already a wipe because of Kai's awesome shot on Widow here. And then instantly Glister getting sniped by a Fire Strike. So this whole first point from King's Row, we're not really going to look at it too much detail. There's not really much to look at here because they started with a man down almost every single time. They had no real space to play around. Nothing really crazy here, like I said. Alright. We see them coming back here. Let's take a look here. What is it looking like here? So we see FD is on top of a wall looking to see what he can see. So he's using that kind of third angle. He boofs away the D.Va. He's on the wall so that he can deal damage past the shield here. Potentially look for boofs. Boofs away the Mei so that the Mei can't get freezing onto Super right away. They're still able to burst down Super though, but again, you see him using this wall trying to be annoying on the top there. Shoot ahead, try to maybe either boop somebody into his team if he sees that they can, or boop people away. So he's doing a good job about mirroring and looking for individual plays there. Amp usage wasn't the worst. I think it still could have been used a little bit better there. But again, alright. So let's see, they back up. He didn't have to use amp there. That's good. He's doing a good job destroying turrets. Still has amp here. Is he going to look to use amp to close at any distance here? He waits for wall is used. He's holding on to this amp for a very long time. I don't think he needed to use amp there for the bomb. I think I would have rather him save the amp. It's so weird. That is so weird. I don't like the amp usage there at all, to be honest, from FD. I feel like he was so hesitant with using the amp. I don't know if he was waiting for the enemy Lucio to use amp there, or if he was just waiting for a proper time to engage with the amp. But I felt like he was very defensive with the amp. And when he finally decided to use the amp, he used it when his team could have easily just walked backwards and blocked the bomb with his shield. So I'm not a big fan of that. Alright, we're seeing him use this window cubby spot, kind of boop people away, just look to see if Gator moves a little bit too far from that corner. He's going to look to boop him away. He instead sees Kai's at the top. He looks to instantly kind of either push him off the top or duel him. Doesn't look to really work out. FD looks to amp forward with Choi's bomb there. They're not able to get a good engagement because the bomb looked to be not the best position. Again, we see a beat utilized to potentially counteract the enemy shatter. It doesn't seem like they got the most value from that sound barrier though, to be fair. They were kind of stuck in limbo there, just waiting. So again, not the most technical value with the sound barrier there, but overall, again, I think he was scared that shatter might land. Okay, he's still kind of playing like a fly on the wall. He's looking to see if he can potentially go for any solo plays or if he can get any boops here. He's doing a good job, in my opinion, in the middle of the fight. If he sees anyone by themselves or looking to make a play onto someone, he is doing a great job booping them around and mirroring them. But it doesn't look like he has been able to get a lot of massive value with his amps. Okay, he boofs the Ryan back from the corner. I don't think he needed to do that. Boop is a pretty short cooldown, to be fair. He's keeping control of that high ground on the top left, which isn't bad. He destroys TP. He's doing a great job of playing in a way to support his team, potentially mirror players there, mirror Sim, mirror anyone that goes through the TP, destroy the TP so his backline is safe. He's doing a good combination, I think, of playing a little bit solo and playing with his team there. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing so far in both. Haven't seen him. My only beef right now with FDGod is his amp usage. It seems a little bit weak in my opinion. His healing hasn't been too bad, but his speed usage has been a little bit poor in my opinion. Okay, he's just amping right now. They're already ahead in that fight, so I don't think the amp really matters too much there. Again, you're seeing him guard his backline against threats. You're seeing him control the high ground, so whenever he's starting on these walls or he's starting on this high ground, he's seeing if he needs to contest anyone on there from a TP or a diva flying up. When he sees it, he looks to contest, boop them off, retake the high ground control so his team doesn't have as many angles to deal with. In this mid fight, where I'm seeing him hold amp for a very long period of time. I don't believe it's because he's waiting for Masa to use amp. I feel like it's more around the line of he's just trying to hold on to it as much as possible, I guess. He tries to control the right side with a boop. He's not able to land a boop. He just instantly backs off, destroys the TP. I think that's fine. What he's looking for there, he's looking for a boop into the enemy Ryan into his Ryan. That's fine. Again, he's using the walls aggressively when they're up to try to make some sort of plays. Again, I don't dislike that. I think that's pretty good. So far, big commendation right now with his positioning and his balance between being a team Lucio and being a solo Lucio. He's doing a great job of looking for his own individual plays, but supporting his team and making sure the enemy team does not get the prime positionings they want or potential kills onto the back line. Right, he's in a perfect play. He uses the beat to potentially guard against the bomb there. Alright, so I talked about before, and this is the one time I'll rewind here. I talked about before here how he was doing a good job of controlling here. The other thing I disliked aside from his amp usage was his sound barriers, right? If you remember, I think this is his second sound barrier, potential third sound barrier. I think it's his third. He hasn't used the sound barrier in very good ways in terms of the middle of the fight. You're seeing him use it to counter a lot of ults, but in a lot of situations, it's areas where he doesn't have to counter, right? So a good example is like right here, right? So he's doing a great job controlling the high ground, potentially looking for boops. He's looking for a sound barrier here. Choi is low, but look at where this bomb lands and look at where his team is. Bomb is landing behind this box, right? The enemy team has not even tried to contest them here at the cart, right? I know there's a window, so they're trying. What Atlantis trying to do is Atlantis trying to sandwich shock between that window and between that bomb. The thing is, cart is in a good position to deny a lot of this wall. Well, Baptiste amplification matrix. The May wall from Nero is in a good position to deny part of the wall as well. So they don't have a lot to work with here. So I rather have just like my team just take this fight and just no worry. You still have land. You still have a lot. You're in a good position here. But now because of this sound barrier, FD feels like they need to engage, and he uses amp as well. He didn't keep in mind the May ultimate here. So he's pretty much rushing his team into death. He has no beat to counter any other ults, right? Shatter is going down during this time because he feels like they have to get value from this beat. So going for a fast play with amp to try to fight at the amplification matrix or by avoiding the bomb is the correct play, but they're kind of playing into Atlantis' hands at this point. Shatter lands, Mail is happening at the same time. Again, he tried to get value with that beat, which is fine, but he didn't take into account, one, where the bomb was landing and where his team was, and number two, he didn't really keep into consideration how he should be, trying to think of the best way to put it, how he should be looking to kind of play when they have full positional advantage, right? Again, I think in general, he played his positioning and movement very well. I think how he utilized his boops, a little bit more defensive than aggressive, which I think is fine. I'm okay with that. A more team-enabling Lucio, but I saw a good balance between that. It's just, again, the amp usage always feels very defensive. It always feels very slow. And the sound barrier always feels like it's reactive, and it's never at points when they really need the sound barrier. It's at points when they have the high HP or they're playing to counter the enemy team's first tempo. I'd rather you take the fight to them, use that sound barrier when you see your HP is low, Same thing with Amp. Like, if you see ults like that, then yeah, sure, use Amp to counter the ult, but make sure it makes sense. A lot of time I saw him use amps so far to counter a Diva Bomb, and it was times when the Diva Bomb, it wasn't even required to counteract the Diva Bomb, walk backwards or walk forwards. They don't need that speed amp. They are either relatively close to cover to protect themselves from the Diva Bomb, or they're relatively close to the enemy team. They don't need the speed to close the distance onto the enemy, right? Again, I want to see a little bit better understanding of when to use this amp, because I feel like right now FD is just using it to use it, especially when he sees the enemy close by. I want to see him use it more for purpose, more for a reason. Alright. See what goes on here. Okay, he's taking top so that he could potentially protect against Diva holding this high ground or a TP, right? He takes the TP, he plays on top of the wall. Again, he's just being a nuisance to Hawk right now. He's staying on this heal amp right now. He doesn't have any sort of ampage for healing to keep his team alive. So you see him instead, he's shifting between heal and speed, mainly staying on the heal. And he's just being a nuisance and taking duels against individual characters that he sees out of position. He's not trying to keep Violet alive right now. He's leaving Violet to his own devices. He's just looking to see who he can kill or who he can kind of push out of position. So you saw him boop to Diva, specifically Hawk from Atlanta there, and start dealing a lot of damage to Hawk on the wall, and then getting a little bit closer when his matrix is down. You saw him try to go for Kai as well when he saw Kai isolated with a TP there, force Kai back, and then afterwards when they're ahead in numbers, he was going for E-Risk because he knows that Violet is safe. He doesn't have to protect Violet there. Alright. With TP, the thing you got to keep in mind is amp speeds aren't necessary all the time anymore. You can use TP in a way to cover distance onto the enemy team. So let's see what ends up happening here. He has a sound barrier already, which is pretty good. They TP. He's not using his amp. This is good. Just keep your amp right now. You don't need it. He looks to amp heal. I like that. That's pretty good. They back up a bit. Beat doesn't hit Choi. I don't like that beat again. Again, even though they were... The reason I don't like it is they were at a standstill. They weren't even fighting yet, and he's using the beat, and he's getting low value from that beat. Right? I think you should have waited a little bit. But again, now we see that he kind of goes a little bit aggressive. He has an off angle. Amp usage isn't terrible there for the healing. He's using it again more as... less as an engagement and more so as like a second tempo in a way. He's using it in a way to kind of protect his team or counter what Atlanta are trying to do, which I don't like that playstyle of Brawl. I like being able to make the first move, go very aggressive, go fast. Again, the sound barriers are being a little bit disappointing for me and falling flat. I feel like he's using them at awkward times. Okay, he's amping the heal to try to keep Super alive here from the wall. They're not able to keep Super alive. He's now just playing the wall, just trying to spam past the enemy Reinhardt shield, try to potentially beat them back from going through the choke. Atlantis still are able to get through the choke pretty well and capitalize on their advantage. Alright, let's see how they approach this fight. It's gonna all be, again, on the TP. It's less on the engagements in these kind of compositions with speed. It's more on the TPs. TPs are a big part of this composition. So we see TP, same kind of thing. We don't see amp. This is good. They're slowly walking up. They destroy the TP. He's trying to push them off the cart there. Again, they restabilize. He's on top of this wall. He's looking to see if anyone's isolated. He doesn't see anyone isolated. Doesn't see anyone on top. He goes back to his team. Again, he's just playing on top of this wall. He's being very careful. He saw that the bomb was coming, so he decided to play on the ground, be a little bit safer. Oh my goodness, he got booped and he couldn't save the two with his beat. Great play from Masa there to deny the boop a little bit more, but it seems like Choi's getting enough value. So this is a little bit of the issue with this composition. As you can tell, there's a lot of clutter and there's a lot of things going on at once here, right? So overall, from this fight, just going back a little bit to where they were kind of... It looked like it could be a lost fight. He's doing a good job staying on Gator to keep him alive and keep him a part of this fight with his amp healing and speed. So again, I like how he, instead of going for his own play, he looked to enable super there a little bit, help his team get into better positions in terms of with the speed, and using his understanding that he's the only healer at that time in the fight, that he has to play to more enable his team than try to go for an engagement with speed or anything like that. So again, I like the more defensive play, less trying to go for individual plays at that point. Because he's not the one that needs to make the play, it's more super Glister that should be making the play. And we saw that super did that with his Shatter. So he's going to utilize the wall. He's going to try to scout, get some high ground positioning from Atlanta. He's booping. It looks like he's booping to delay the engagement from Atlanta. I don't know what happened there. Let's go back and see here. So this is fine. At the start, his positioning here is fine. He's scouting. He's trying to get some damage a little bit past the shield. He's playing the wall, trying to anticipate their engagement. He tries to, I guess, boop Gator more into the team, but I don't think that was really necessary. I think when you're going between Gator and his team, especially since you have no momentum, a drop like that means that you're pretty much dropping to your death, and when you drop, it's going to be very hard for you to get out of there really fast. So I would prefer for him to stay in the air, or potentially just gone on the high ground and just try to boop Gator away, because they were in an ideal position already to fight. So not a big fan of that boot particularly from him, that offensive boot. Again, fight looks a little bit rough there from Shock. They seemed a little bit disoriented there after getting a kill down. FD didn't seem to know where he wanted to go. He didn't know if he wanted to help Choi or if he should help his team. He gets isolated from the wall, and his indecisiveness makes it so that he ends up going down in that fight as well. Lucio, you always have a lot of choices to do, like I said, right? You need to have a balance between playing with your team and not playing with your team. And that is a hard part with Lucio. Alright. Let's see what ends up happening here. We have 45 seconds left. This is the last push from Shock. Let's see kind of how this goes here. Okay, he's trying to see if he can get any boofs, see anyone isolated. Clear high ground potentially with the boop as well. Doesn't see anything. It looks pretty clear. He's holding his amp this whole time here. Okay, they flip. He destroys the sentry turrets from Sim. Okay, this was not as bad as a beat, I would say, compared to what I've seen in the past. So I actually like that beat because they're actually fighting at that point. They're doing very well. I don't fully understand what his positioning thought process is here, though. It's very awkward. In these mid fights, I feel like he's getting lost a lot of the time. He doesn't know where he should position or anchor off of. I think he needs to look for super more in these situations, and he needs to look for Violet more. After this, I will kind of go back into the fight and see when Violet died. I kind of want to see positionally where Violet was. He tries to peel for super here. He ends up helping super kind of get out, but he ends up going down from that because him and super are separated from the team. I think from here, Shock ends up losing this fight, and that's just the map. So I'm going to go back. We're going to look at this. We're going to go back a little bit more. Right here is when I want to look. Ahead, right here is where I want to look. So, again, over here, he uses amp to kind of get his team in a better position against this bomb, because this bomb is trying to separate Shock right now. And the reason I like that beat, even though it looks like it doesn't hit Choi here, because Choi's up top and he's in mini, is look at where the rest of Atlanta is, right? Atlanta is looking to actually fight Shock here, and Shock is in a position to potentially fight as well, right? He's sort of mirroring the beat as well from Masa. It's not terrible. I would have just preferred for all of Shock to walk forward with this, not just Nero and Super. But in general, the thought process here isn't the worst, right? They're trying to get some sort of value, and this is the best value, I will be honest, that I've seen with beat so far. So where is FD during this time? So FD now is looking forward. He's playing with his team. He's helping them secure kills. So I assume what ended up happening was, I just want to double check. Where did Violet die? Violet died in his team? Holy crap. What the heck? It's crazy.
动作不许走。
So Violet just died because from just shots there. There's nothing that he could have done there. So I'm okay with that, actually, to be honest with you. Most of the time, I'll be honest, Lucio shouldn't... So I'll point this out as a nitpicky thing, but also like as a side note. When you are doing this, right? You as Lucio... This is a good thing that FD is doing. You want to be the last person to kind of be with your team here, because Aura can still reach them as long as they're in your LOS. The issue is if you go too far forward, the team or your teammates might not be in the LOS. The other thing you have to keep in mind is if you're too far forward, let's say from Violet here, he wants to protect Violet first. So what he needs to do is he needs to play a little bit further back so that he can peel if anyone tries to go for Violet, right? So maybe Violet's over here, FD's over here. If FD isn't close to Violet, he can't peel Kai, he can't peel a Diva, he can't peel against specific characters. So this is a decent thing from FD. It's unfortunate because he's on speed for a little bit too long, and that's why Violet loses a little bit of HP here. But again, looking at the rest here, right?
10 seconds.
It looks like Shock kind of just split up here, which is really bad. Can they go back? Alright, let's see where FD is and Super is.
动作不许走。
I don't think there's anything FD could have done there, to be honest with you. FD is just trying to keep Super alive here. This goes down to splitness. And this is why I said, as Lucio, I brought up all these things, and something that you're noticing with Shock is FD is doing some good stuff. In my opinion, individually as a player, is he doing everything perfectly? No. But is he doing a lot of the good stuff? Is he using his boops efficiently? Is he doing a good thing being between the team and looking for his own value? Is he being on specific auras at the right time? Yes, 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 yes. Do I feel like he can use amp a little bit better? Yes. Do I feel like he can use sound barrier a bit better? Yes. But the issue with those two things is it doesn't just come down to individual understanding. It also comes down to team understanding. So, and not just team understanding, but team communication as well. So his team comms could be super hectic right now, and he doesn't know the correct time when to do something, right? Or it might sound like it's the best time to do that specific thing, but in reality, it isn't, right? So again, this is why Lucio to me can be a complex hero, because he fills a lot of roles, and sometimes he's at the mercy of his team, not at himself, right? Because Lucio's value comes from being able to enable your team, not specifically from you just making solo plays, right? So that being said, I know I kind of like didn't wait till the game was over, but Shock pretty much ends up losing that fight. This is the end of the Lucio review. So we'll kind of look again at these points, and like I said, the key things I would say to keep in mind is this sound barrier. I would have liked to see him do this more. I feel like he didn't do the timing properly with this. He used it too much to counter, and his team never really got value with it. It didn't feel like he used it properly to sustain longer in these fights. My only other issue is just with this amp usage. With regard to the points, it's just with the engagements, honestly. I feel like a lot of the times with engagements, it just... I'm trying to think what point it would look at the best at, and I would say this one specifically. I feel like you never started the fight with amp, or the better way to put it is you never were deciding when to engage. I always felt like Atlanta had more of the engagement at their side. Shock was again playing that more counter style, which you can do, but again, I'm a fan in these brawl-oriented comps more of you taking the first action comparatively to you countering the enemy's actions. Aside from that, again, I think he did a fantastic job with regard to his positioning and movement. Good kind of balance between the two. Boop usage, we saw a lot of the boop usage in terms of going for aggressive boops. Very rarely. He was mainly going for defensive boops because of the, again, Shock's playstyle. He created some good distance between peeling. He was being a nuisance quite a lot. Again, he was being very good with kind of protecting that high ground as well. We saw some good usage with that aura and amp in terms of healing at specific points when his team was at specific HP levels. When they were kind of looking to kite, they were ready to use that speed almost straight away to kite the enemy ults, right? And again, the positioning, he was wall riding most of the time when he felt like he could try to make a play or try to kind of force an enemy out of a good position or put them in a very poor position. But when he couldn't get access to a wall, you saw him stay a little bit more with Violet. He was looking to enable specific players on his team. He was looking to mirror the enemy characters, right, that were specifically threats to his team. So again, overall, FDGod Lucio, 1 thumb up over 2. I would have liked to see a little bit more from him, but in general, it wasn't bad.